What's up, you guys? Sean from Rest to Live here, and I want to tell two quick stories just to kick off the week, especially for those of you who are rental property investors, you're looking at properties, you're thinking about getting to the real estate game. I think that these are both scary, but also kind of funny, and also really speaks to the kind of things you sometimes just find yourself in the middle of when you're looking at properties. And in both cases, I was lucky enough to have my business partner with me. We are local to each other, although we do invest across the U.S. and then a little bit overseas. These two stood out to me as being probably the two worst experiences I've ever in my life of being inside of a property that we're looking at. So my business partner also has a real estate license, so we can obviously get into things pretty easily, which it makes life really simple. So if you are thinking about getting into the real estate game and you're looking for a partner or someone to work with, it does pay off to have an ally or a friend or someone who has that license to quickly get into things. So sometimes because of this, we are real buyers and we buy fast. And when we see something that is worthwhile, we can make an offer. So we do get into properties pretty quick as soon as they hit the market or sometimes before. Sometimes, though, this can lead to things that you see that maybe other people don't see when they're looking at properties. So in both cases, not surprisingly, both of these houses or apartments rather were in Massachusetts. One was sort of in near the area where I live, which is sort of more like north of Boston, a little bit under the New Hampshire border. And then the other one, the second one, which is the worst one by far, is out in sort of Western Massachusetts. A little bit, great, hardworking people. The area is a little bit older. A lot of the properties tend to be a little bit older. A little bit lower on the income side. Great people, but the houses tend to be in rough shape. So let's start with the first one. These are going to be quick. It's a Monday morning. I just thought it was worth sharing because I'd love to hear below if you have similar terrible stories or probably even worse, frankly. I'd love to hear what you've encountered. I've seen everything from, the meth lab houses, the blood on the floors, to the diapers and the shoes and the hoarding. I've seen insane animal hoarding, things like this. But these two in particular, I still sometimes can wake up at night and I'm itchy just thinking about even having been inside of these places. So the first one was actually a really big former, I would say like 250-year-old style, 200-old mansion. It's been added on to several times. Really was with the same family for a very, very long time. It was originally sitting on a massive amount of acreage. So what they had done over time is they kept selling off pieces of acreage as we went. And we had someone reach out to us and say, hey, look, no one really needs a house this big in this area. There's potential to consider turning into either condos or potentially into apartments. Now, that's not really the business that I'm in, but I think they realized that we, at a minimum, could go in there and understand, is it worth doing this? Do we know other people we can flip the deal to, or just bring in who might be interested in it either way? So right off the bat, the house is just creepy as all heck. And, typical really, really old house, right? Big pine floors, everything you step on creaks and cracks. There's always this feeling of like there's something walking above you upstairs. You're hearing noises down in the basement, but ancient HVAC systems. These are the things you just expect. We get up to the second floor, similar to the first floor. It's a mess. Everything is extremely outdated. The house is also very creepily, what's the right word? I guess personalized in a very odd way. Like, instead of a fireplace where we have, it's old, right? So it's an old fireplace with a lot of stone, real stone, not like today's version of just putting it on top of cement board or whatever. But they've got these like trinkets embedded all over the place into the cement. And it gives this feeling of like, hey, maybe when this was new, it looks cool, but now it's like really like, it's under your skin almost. You're like, oh my God, what am I looking at? So we get up to the second floor. And the person who's showing the house to us is like, hey, listen, I'm just going to tell you now, the third floor is kind of weird. So before you go up there, just be aware. We're thinking like, man, if the third floor is weird, I don't know what we're going to encounter in the basement. So we get up to the third floor, and they were explaining that this house is so old that it still has all the original servant rooms or apartments. And we've seen several homes where we have in fact encountered a lot of these kind of things. These like creepy, teeny tiny little servant chambers up in attics. Never finished well, real crappy, not typically, no access to heat. Certainly there's no AC, of course. But even in general, like there's a general lack of insulation. That's the word I was looking for there. So there's just a lot of real old stuff up there, right? Stuff that you're like, hey, you got to get this out of here. I don't even want to be around it. But the whole time, I keep saying to my buddy, I'm like, man, don't you feel like there's stuff walking around all over us everywhere we go? And he's like, yeah, same thing. It's like the walls are moving. I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but like, it's going to get bad fast here. So we finally are like, okay, this house is going to need a massive and utter and complete overhaul. First, second, third floor, nothing's good. From what we could see, the wiring was ancient. The piping was all terrible. It was going to be a total, like, to the studs, and even then, maybe not even profitable to keep this building standing. But as a rule, we always check out a basement no matter what. First and foremost, if you're an investor, it's good to see the basement to learn how they work, kind of systems you encounter, and how to start to understand, flood lines, cracks and foundations, etc. So we're going down the basement stairs, and I'm going to remind everyone, I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6'3". My business partner is 6'3". So we get down in the basement and our heads are like rubbing along the ceilings, which are just coated and covered in spider webs, cobwebs, the whole shebang. And I mean like sci-fi channel level, like I'm pulling spider webs apart to get to the back of the basement to where all the systems are located. Because even though this isn't something we generally look at, when you see a property like this, there are a lot of times you can pick it up for pennies on the dollar. And even if it's not your thing, you can pick a property like this up and then flip it over to someone who will work with it and share in the profits. So we're in the basement, we've got our flashlights out, and we're starting to like try to read the labels on whatever we can that's at least modern. And at this point now, like there is clearly some sort of an animal or something all throughout the house. The realtor who's showing us the property says, hey, I think there is actually a light. I got to go flip the switch. It's literally like a hard flip, right? I literally want to throw up even thinking about this. Flips the light switch on, and we both freeze in our tracks as there's got to be 500 rats on every single beam over our heads, running along the pipes, corners of the floors. Everywhere we look, there are literally rats all over us, all over this property. The entire thing is completely infested from bottom to all the way up. So we were like, we're getting the F out of here right now. We're all set. Thanks for showing us the property. So we're talking to this person outside, and I'm like, you didn't know that there were like 10,000 rats inside this house? And they're literally like, well, it's an old house. You have to expect that they're going to have these things. And so needless to say, we passed on that property. And it was absolutely took me like a week to feel like I wasn't going to vomit when I like went into any property or heard any noises, even in my own house. So that was sort of my first one that was really kind of gross and also creepy as hell being in that place. The second one is without a doubt the most disturbing, worst things I've ever seen in a house. And now for those who can see behind me, obviously I have kids. It's a big deal that we take good care of children. There's no play here. You don't take care of kids, you're gonna have a problem. And I don't mind saying this on camera, like I'll be your problem if you're not taking care of your kids. So we go into this property. This is out in Western Massachusetts. We had someone reach out to us and say, like, look, this is a pretty tough property. It's going to need people who have experience in handling, what I would say is more of the extreme side of things. Be able to go in and move fast, handle some issues that are going on with back issues on the property, but also be able to understand that there's going to be a lot of work needed. So the price was right. It was like a 12-unit building. And they were literally asking $200K, give or take. I don't remember the exact number, but it was low, like way low. And he even said he would throw in another lot of property as a parking lot that was adjacent to the property, but not being used for that reason. So again, like you got to go and look at things like that because this is the business you're in real estate. You never know when you're going to find a dime in the rough. This was one of those properties that stays with you for a long time because of the things you see. And we ended up having to tell the realtor that like he has to report the owners to like local authorities, which he did, because this was one of those situations where it was like, you're going to do this or we're going to do this, and it's going to get way worse for everybody. So we're touring this property. It's a 4-unit, and then probably directly next door within 3 feet of it, literally on the same lot, is an 8-unit. The 3 units, terrible shape. Every floor needs total gut rehab. It's basically, I would describe it as maybe sort of along the lines of a a place where people who can't find work would go if they need to live for free and have no income but can't get Section 8, right? So $300 a month rents, which in Massachusetts does not happen, right? So really low rents. The people were a mixture of, pretty tough shape, looks like a lot of alcohol and drug issues, and based on the things we saw inside the units, there's no doubt about that. And then also a mixture, which is always sad, of elderly people. That's always the part that kills me, is when I see really elderly people in these situations, and they have no options, they have no choices. One of the units had a tarp literally nailed over its front part of its facade, because it's so cold and they don't have heat on, that the tarp helps to stop the wind from blowing in. So like nightmare, horrible situation. So we're already thinking like, this is absolutely terrible. But at this point we're inside the house, so we got to essentially work our way out. As expected, the attic's a mess, but nothing crazy. The basement's in really bad shape, nothing crazy. Probably needs to be dug out for some code issues, and then rerun some piping, and then a little bit of insulation. At least that solves some of the problems. And whoever's going to come in there, hopefully is coming in with enough of a budget to fix some of these, what I would call pretty simple things, and cost effective. And even like, we have this thing called Mass Save, where they'll come in and do an energy assessment of your home, and you can get really discounted services for things like insulation and tax breaks, etc. So we're touring another two more apartments, and we're suddenly like, wait a minute, we're missing something here. Where are the bathrooms? And the guy, who we found out later was actually a partner in owning the building, which is, we were furious about. He's like, oh yeah, I've shown you the bathrooms. And I was like, no, dude, like, you showed me some half bathrooms. So in 4 of the units, they had, and granted, they were in terrible shape, but like, there was a toilet and there was a sink, and then that was all. And I was like, we got to go back and look at these, because I'm obviously missing something here, right? It's a 12-unit building. I haven't seen 12 full bathrooms. So he's like, oh, well, some of the units do share like another bathroom. And I know that sounds probably crazy to most people who watch this, but we do run into this a bit. It's sort of like a mixture between a rooming house and sort of like a dorm style house. Now we would never personally invest in that situation. I think that requires someone who can be a full-time on-site investor. That's not what we do. We run this as a hands-off business, priority management teams, etc. So I'm smiling, but I'm actually getting mad right now as I'm thinking about it. The one thing that stood out to me as we were looking at these final units was that there were kids' toys in a couple of the apartments, and clearly what was some sort of a kid's bedroom setup or whatever. Now everyone runs on hard times. I don't begrudge anyone for not having money. I don't begrudge anyone for being in tough situations. The kids' rooms looked clean. Their toys looked clean. So people probably trying to do the best they can do. But the thing that stood out is we just had not seen a bathtub or a shower. I mean, like, these are things you sort of the most important things I look at, right? The basement and then the bathrooms. Anywhere where there could be water or leakage or issues, that's where I'm going to look. So you could tell this dude was beating around the bush. He just did not want to bring us to wherever this shared bathroom supposedly was. And I was like, listen, man, we're leaving then, because obviously there's something wrong here and you don't want us to know what's going on. He was like, no, it's just an interesting setup because we had to make it work based on the building. And there's never going to be a good situation when someone starts off with like, we had to make it work. So we're now out in the hallway, which is freezing cold, by the way. It was wintertime when we were there. So granted, it was wintertime, but still it's freezing cold inside the place. And he's like, we had to convert this room into the shower sort of setup. And this room, he's standing in front of the door. It's a closet though. Like, I can tell it's a closet. It looks like a coat closet in the hallway. I'm thinking like, wow, this must be the greatest conversion of all time. And I've seen some crazy stuff, right? Like, this one took the cake. He opens up the door, and it is in fact a literal coat closet with essentially like a little shower floor pan on the bottom, right? Probably like, I don't know, call it like a lip like that, a little basin, and then drain. And then above is, a shower head coming down with the actual shower right in the pipe. But here's the thing. But I mean, I can't even believe it still. It's so clear in my mind. I can see it right now as if I'm in it. I look up and I see like, those old school, like almost corrugated cheap plastic, like square light covers, like, if you have a hanging ceiling with like the tiles that go up the ceiling, this would have been one of those like old, like square pieces of plastic, the light bulbs above it. If you want to get the light bulb, you got to take the square down. They had cut the square of plastic in half, cut out a hole for the shower head, then put it back up. So we now have a light directly above a water source with no ventilation. The drain clearly looks like it doesn't work well. And then you could see water sitting on top of the plastic sheathing and the wires from the lights sitting in the water. And of course, immediately I'm like, oh, Jesus, I jump out of this thing and I'm like, dude, this is a death chamber, man. Like, you got one spark, you're frying someone in this thing. And he literally was like, that's why I need help and I'm selling it because I can't take care of it. And I'm like, take care of it. Like, this is like you're going to jail for 20 years type of thing, not taking care of a property. So we of course told him, like, on the spot, you got to call someone right now. And we sat there and waited to make sure that like something was done. I definitely will tell you, we did follow up with the real estate agency and everything else involved because it was sort of a really scary moment. And like the rats can be scary, the creepy houses are scary, the attics can be scary and freaky and crazy, but never in my 39 years have I seen someone convert a coat closet in a hallway to a shower with electrical wires sitting in water and a working light about a half an inch above the water source. So I just want to share these stories on a Monday morning. If you're out looking at real estate this week or you're thinking about getting into investing, I want to tell you that the horror stories are real and they do exist, but you don't have to buy them. And you also can do great things for people by making sure situations like that don't exist in your own homes, or your own rentals. So what I would love to hear is if you have seen similar things, please give me a comment below and let me know what you've seen. I'd love to hear some of your stories as well. And if you do this on a regular basis and you see stuff like this all the time, I'd love to have you come on and talk about it and even how you remediate these things. So I think people would love to hear that as well. So with that, this went way longer than I thought, but I started getting deep into my memories here. So between rats and closet showers, those are two of the worst things I've personally encountered being in the real estate game and being in the rentals game. So with that, hey, have a good week. Happy hunting out there. Hopefully you're finding much better properties than that. And as always, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Really appreciate it. Have a good one.